Ladies and gentlemen, for pretty much the entire month of November, we at Mirana have been stressing on the fact that the official response to the pollution crisis from all stakeholders concerned, central, state, bureaucrat, politician, oscillates from an ostrich to a tughlaq. Either they have their heads buried in the sand, or they come up with such a tughlaqi farman that creates more chaos than clarity it is supposed to bring in the first place. Nowhere is this more evident than when it comes to our children. First, they were too late to shut schools when AQI reached 900, 1000 across the NCR region. And now they don't know how to open it. Since nobody really wants to take the responsibility of getting kids back to school, they have decided to pass the buck in the most embarrassing yet calamitous way. So what really happened yesterday was a case study about how to get a simple decision wrong. The Supreme Court first came up with an order yesterday in the evening saying that GRAP 4 will remain in the national capital, but schools which are supposed to be shut during GRAP 4 may reopen. But that decision was left to the CAQM, the central panel which has already covered itself in glory with its spectacular inability to carry out basic instructions and take action on time. The CAQM decided to come up in its infinite wisdom to have hybrid classes. And it left the decision of implementing these hybrid classes to the state governments. Now, that CAQM order, ladies and gentlemen, came at around 8 p.m. last night. Now, obviously, all state governments, all the district magistrates of Noida, Gurugram, Ghaziabad, along with the Delhi government, was left with very little time to actually come up with a decision. So then they left the decision to the schools, that you decide whether to have online classes, whether to have offline classes, whether to have a khichdi of both, and call it a hybrid model. The end result was so chaotic that this morning, parents across the national capital had no idea whether to send their children to school or not. Now the question arises, what even are hybrid classes? I have been speaking to a lot of parents and teachers across the day, and there is no clear answer. Let's start from the beginning and let's start with the three interpretations. One interpretation of what exactly a hybrid class is the most common one. That is, in one class, some students will be in online mode and the other students will be there physically. That's the first interpretation. The second interpretation, which some schools have followed in the past, is that you come up with some sort of an odd, even, or a staggered form, that on some days you have physical classes, on some days you have online classes, to try and minimize the impact. The third interpretation is that for some classes, maybe the primary ones you have online, and for the senior classes, you have physical classes, you can get them. So there's absolute chaos. Schools are ultimately deciding what is the best option available to them. So we have reached a situation where nobody is happy with hybrid classes. Parents are struggling with constant decisions that throw them off household routines. They're all working parents, keep in mind. Schools are finding it difficult to juggle with both online and offline classes at the same time. There is a logistical nightmare. And students are finding it very hard to learn effectively because the teachers are divided. They're either addressing the students in front of them in the class, or they're addressing the camera in front of them. It's absolute chaos. Listen in to a parent we spoke to today.
What is GRAP 4? As a mother, I'm very distressed because 6 years, it started when my son was in class 3rd, that we heard something about pollution break. It's happening now, it's going to go to class 10th. I think he's going to finish his schooling by something called as a pollution break. There's no Diwali break. There's no thrill about summer break. We have pollution break where you have an ease of hybrid. We are those 3 to 6% of the elite class who can afford number of tablets, number of personal computers for the classes. What about the 96% of the population? I mean, this is not how the government has to act. These all are reactive measures. There is no preventive measure why this situation has arisen.
So we at Mirana today took a conscious decision to not get political guests because we all know that will come down to a basic tu meme debates. Instead, we decided to get stakeholders from all sections of society. So we have, representing the doctors who will caution about health risks, we have Dr. Sanjeev Bagai, someone who has been very useful, as someone who has been very helpful and very instrumental to Mirana's debates in the past. He is the chairperson of FRON. Dr. Bagai is joining us. We have been joined by Vinesh Menon, who is the director and general of CEO of ARISE. ARISE stands for the Association for Reinventing School Educationists. So he's, of course, a prominent educational reformer. We have been joined by Professor Syed Nawaz Ahmed, who is an educationist and also, more importantly, a parent himself. And I'm being joined by Saji Philip, the principal of the Khaitan School, a prominent school in Noida. Thank you all, gentlemen, for joining us. Let me start with the parent voice on the panel, Syed Nawaz Ahmed. In paper, a hybrid model seems to be the best of both worlds because there are some parents who might find it way too difficult to have their children in the home because they have to also go for their own office as well, and they find it difficult to have the children at home. And they might not have purifiers anyway, as the bench responded yesterday. And there are some parents who may be still quite uncomfortable sending their children to school in the mornings when the air quality is at its worst. So a hybrid model on paper offers the best of both worlds. Why is there then so much of chaos and so much of a kickback coming in from parents, from teachers, from schools, from the school authorities themselves? Professor Ahmed, I think you're muted. I'll just ask you to unmute yourself
Yeah.
first.
Thank you so much. I think you told very well in your opening remark. It's a confusion today's morning. As a parent, we also confused today. And at 7 p.m. today, I got the message from the school that we are shifting to physical classes from tomorrow onwards. I think it's just like a passing the ball. मुझे ऐसा लग रहा है कि हम सब सिर्फ बॉल पास कर रहे हैं और लास्ट में हमने पेरेंट्स के ऊपर छोड़ दिया नाउ इट्स योर जॉब टू टेक अ कॉल इट्स अ टफ आई थिंक इट्स अ डिफिकल्ट task for us to take a call. If we consider education, we compromise with health. If we compromise with health, education suffers. And I'm a father of a 6-year-old kid. It's very hard for to attend online classes all the time. The concentration is an issue. I think 2016 onwards, it's been 8 years, we are facing the same problems. हमने इसको ऑड इवन से और अलग अलग तरीकों से सिर्फ प्रिवेंटिव मेजर्स लेने अजीब से इश्यूज हम क्रिएट करते जा रहे हैं और मुझे लग रहा है कि सोल्यूशन की तरफ कोई बात नहीं कर रहा हमारी सारी डिबेट इस बात की है कि कब ग्रैप 1 आएगा कब ग्रैप 4 आएगा कब किसमें क्या अलाउ होगा एंड इट्स वेरी फ्रस्ट्रेटिंग एज अ पेरेंट एंड आई एम आल्सो एजुकेशनिस्ट आई थिंक इट्स वेरी टफ to have class in this circumstances in this pollution because we are also facing same problem in higher education also. So I think government should take a call, strict call, कि how to prevent this pollution. 8 years, same problem. I think it's enough. I think it's enough. I think we should take a call. We should take a strong step toward it. There are countries जिन्होंने इसके ऊपर steps लिए हैं और कामयाबी मिली हो ना मिली हो एटलीस्ट इम्प्रूवमेंट आया है ये ऐसे मंथ्स होते हैं नवंबर एंड दिसंबर जब सारे स्कूल्स के अंदर डिफरेंट इवेंट्स होते हैं डिफरेंट कार्निवल्स होते हैं स्पोर्ट्स एक्टिविटीज होती है हमारे बच्चे कुछ नहीं पार्टिसिपेट कर पा रहे हैं घर पे कंसंट्रेशन नहीं हो पाता क्लासेस भेजना आई एम आल्सो वरिंग कि मैं कल क्या करूं आई डोंट नो मैं कल उसे भेजूं या ना भेजूं एंड फॉर पेरेंट्स हु आर वर्किंग mom and dad I think it's very difficult for them also.
Yeah, that's the point because आपको as you said Professor Ahmed, आपको आज शाम को 7 बजे पता चला है कि कल आपके बच्चे को क्लास भेजना है.
Yes.
Now, and this is not also uniform step. आप if you are, I'm assuming which आप NCR के कौन से पार्ट से हो सर?
Yeah, Noida. I'm from Noida.
Yeah, so you're from Noida, this is the decision. In Delhi, it might be a completely different decision taken in a school. And schools within Delhi are taking different calls. It may be a different story in Gurgaon, it may be a different story in Ghaziabad. So it is quite chaotic and it is changing from day to day. So today you maybe say that, okay, tomorrow the pollution is too high, classes are online. Uske baad you're told that, okay, now we have been told to reopen classes, so again send the schools. I can imagine it's absolutely chaotic.
Very, very chaotic. We don't know. My kid is very frustrating. She's asking me, Papa, I have to go or not? Tomorrow is online class or offline class? So I think it's very chaotic, very disturbing as a parent. I think it's sad.
Yeah, and spare a thought for the child also. At the end of the day, it's anyway, schools are anyway facing the challenge of making learning informative and appealing to children, and changing models constantly is a nightmare. Let me then bring in the school's point of view at this point. Saji Philip is the principal of the Khaitan School of Noida. Saji Philip, what is the nightmare that schools also face at this point? Because some of the statements that have been coming in today have been saying that, at the end of the day, this is not a new model. We were used to 2 years of a pandemic where we are used to dealing with a situation where it could be a mix of online, could be a mix of physical classes here. then why are the schools themselves so hesitant and so reluctant or so challenged by the concept of a hybrid model?
See, schools are challenged because there are many sides to it. For example, November and December, October, November, December, these 3 months are very, very hectic for a school because that's the time a lot of things are happening. That's one thing. Secondly, we don't get decisions on time from the authorities. We got a circular for online
Yes.
classes at 11:30 at night. How are we supposed to disseminate the information to the parents? And there are so many stakeholders. We have 80 buses running, the drivers, the conductors, the maids, the guards. I mean, it is literally impossible. And again, hybrid. We got a circular saying that it is hybrid mode. A hybrid can be interpreted in many ways. And the effectiveness of a hybrid class is questionable because you either neglect the children who are sitting in the classroom or the ones who are online. So this is a major challenge. Secondly, when we talk about education, we are not just talking about the middle class or the upper middle class or the rich. What about children who can't afford devices? What about children who are dependent on midday meals? So the ambiguity in the instructions from the authority is a big challenge for us. I hope I'm clear.
And not to mention, Mr. Philip, the logistical challenges of each school. Not every school has the ability to have projectors or video recording facilities the way online classes conducted. Not every school has the ability to do both of them at the same time. Like in a completely online environment, a teacher can do it from his or her own room. But in a classroom, setting up a projector creates a situation where the teacher either has to look at the camera or has to look at the students, and that creates a lot of difficulty for students where it's anyway a challenge to keep their attention spans on. Is that also one of the reasons why we are seeing different schools come up with different interpretations of the hybrid model that makes it even more chaotic than for parents?
Correct. I would say that even a few minutes back, there was a message in the group. There's a message. There's a WhatsApp group of principals and BIOs and the PSA and all these people are there. They're still confused. People are asking, how are we supposed to conduct the classes? I mean, there are schools which have facilities. They do conduct hybrid classes, but I don't believe in the efficacy of those classes. I mean, you can't hold the attention of a child who is sitting remotely, and you are also addressing to a group of children who are sitting in front of you. So it is absolutely for me as a teacher. I have an experience of 28 years of teaching. I would say no. Hybrid is not the answer.
So what is the answer? And I'll come back to you, Mr. Philip, at this point. Let me bring in Vinesh Menon. Because what we have heard from so far, we have heard from Professor Syed Nawaz and we have also heard from Saji Philip that the chain of events that happened yesterday, it is so annoying to be at least from what I got is that everyone just wanted to pass the buck. No one wants to take the onus of taking the decision. Okay, now we say that it's safe for children to come back to school, or now it's not unsafe. It's not yet safe for children to come back to school. So what will happen is, let's start with the Supreme Court. It has left a decision to the COQM. The COQM leaves the decision to state governments. The state government then leaves the decision to schools. Schools have to then take a decision and then communicate it to parents, and all of this happens post 11 p.m. before 7 a.m. It is absolutely annoying and amazing how we have so many stakeholders, but not one of them actually thinks from the point of view of the children, the parents, their educators themselves. उनका काम है कि ठीक है हमने ऑर्डर भेज दिया है, अब अगले पर्सन की बारी है कि हाउ टू इम्प्लीमेंट इट, किसको करना है, buck is now on them.
Okay, so Anshu, hi. I'm sorry, but what exactly is the question you're asking me, therefore?
My question is, Vinesh, does this not smack of absolute apathy and lack of planning on the part of, say, the Supreme Court or the COQM, that they think that such they can just pass an order or issue a circular at wee hours of the night without any clarity, or leave it up to the next part of the supply chain without realizing the amount of chaos it wreaks on the schools, on the parents, on the teachers?
No, no, absolutely. I mean, I completely agree that it is certainly not having an instruction given at 8 in the night for an execution to be done the next morning. Certainly cannot be seen as a very pragmatic or a very well thought through process for sure. But I think let's just go back and understand what really perhaps one, of course, is prevention is better than cure. So I'm not even getting into that space. Year 2020 is when the whole concept of online, learning and online teaching went into its heights because there was almost a 18-month period where all children were at home, and naturally the entire schooling system came to an end. School buildings were shut, but schooling was not shut, and that schooling happened through an online process. And that is how everybody started getting used to online. Teachers started learning how to deliver online classes. Children started learning how to get online, how to learn online. And somewhere after COVID went away, there was this little voice that kept going around saying that this is the new way of teaching the students. But the truth is that a child who has to learn cannot certainly be learning online. I think of physical infrastructure. In fact, they say that after the parent as well as the teacher, the third teacher is actually the learning spaces. And the learning spaces are physical infrastructures. Learning spaces are where children come and talk to each other. The social emotional skills get built out there. I don't think anything can replace that. So somewhere I think the definition of the word online or definition of the word hybrid is completely mistaken. You had mentioned three options of what are the interpretation of hybrid. I think all three options are incorrect. To the educationist of today and to the children of today, especially in schools where technology has made its way into the classroom, hybrid learning or hybrid teaching is when you use a judicious mix of physical teaching and online teaching. It doesn't mean that you have one child physically in front of you and one child online. No, we're talking about teaching online and using gadgets, using technology tools, using multimedia to attempt to try and make a subject learning more interesting inside the class. That is really a combination of
True.
using technology and being physical. So when you teach a young child about star, and the child cannot see the star in the sky, obviously, then you use imagery and you use a
Yes.
good amount of technology to show what a star looks like, and probably it twinkles, and then you can move into twinkle twinkle little star and stuff like that. Or if you want to have the older children do a lot of research, today they're able to do research much better and much deeper because they're using technology. They start doing R&D. They can go home and do an exercise of what they have learned in the school and then come back the next day with far more deeper. That is hybrid to the school. Hybrid is not about having one child physical and one child online, I'm afraid. That is point number one. Point number two, I think one needs to understand that one size cannot fit all, especially in a country like India. I mean, I'm sorry, but Supreme Court, there are some good
Exactly.
points that they've made, but one point about not having air purifiers in the house versus having, I don't think that really, because you see, to the urban schools and schools which have got good infrastructure, there are children who come inside a vehicle and get into the building, and they actually, it's not the building and sitting, it's the travel time between the house to the school where they face the pollution, which has
Yes.
issues. And in government schools, how are you
That too
going to
at
address
7
this
in the
issue?
morning, where the air quality is the worst.
Yeah, so I think one size doesn't fit all. You just cannot. So I get a feeling that because of the 2020 COVID and the infusion of online and the natural affinity to kind of balance physical teaching and online teaching through teaching methodologies has somewhere got misunderstood. And I think it has been seen as online
And
for a
Minesh
child on a
Menon,
computer versus a child
there is
physically.
one fundamental difference. Uh, Vinesh Menon, and I'll just come to Dr. Bagay right after this. Vinesh Menon, there's one fundamental difference between the pandemic and now, which I'm amazed people and PAR don't understand. During the pandemic, everyone, especially during lockdown, everyone was from, including the parents themselves. This is a situation where schools may have been shut for physical classes, but their parents, working parents, still have to go to work. At best, there are some government employees which are working at a staggered 50% work from home. So the solution does not come by shifting it blindly to online classes, because at the end of the day, who is going to be at home when the child is ultimately studying or taking education from that? That's something no one seems to have thought about, Vinesh.
Let me tell you something more interesting. You're talking about parents going to work, that is understood. But what about children who do not go to school but eventually go outside to the park and play? Right? I don't think there is any rule which says that children
Yeah.
should be locked inside the house, right? They're anyways going to be outside playing in the park in the evening, and they're going to be breathing the same air that they would have otherwise breathed even if they go to school. So I think there is a fundamental disconnect in understanding this whole process. Yes, there are many cities where inclement weather or weather conditions sometimes stop children from going to school. For example, Mumbai rains when rains kind of flood the roads and the entire system kind of comes to a grinding halt. Schools do get shut. So schools getting shut is not the issue, but I don't think you can get into the gray area. I think either you shut the schools because there is a situation, or you open the schools because the situation has calmed down. You can't do a mix of both, and you certainly cannot
Okay.
misinterpret the word online or hybrid. I think that that definition itself is completely flawed in what
That's
manner is being received by
absolutely.
the
That's
by the parents.
and you're bang on, because I was speaking to production head Charu was saying the same thing, that you can stop a kid from going to school, but they are still going out to the park to play. It's not that they are locked indoors in their room the entire day, so they're being impacted by the air pollution anyway. Dr. Bagai, I'll come to you last, and forgive me for coming to you so late. But the bottom line in all of these conversations is, let's realize the reason why this entire drama, this entire hassle was necessary in the first place. That is because pollution in the capital reached emergency levels here. Now you've heard from parents, from educationists, from teachers, from principals. The last, I mean, the furthest thing on the back of their mind right now is in terms of pollution, or should a child be safe or not? Because at the end of the day, parents are having such inconveniences in their daily lives that the last priority often is, and I don't blame them at this point, is should my child even be going out at this point? It's okay if my child misses a few classes, or if my child's learning is taken back by a few days because he or she is not being able to concentrate. And that sums up how badly we've got our entire response to this emergency wrong in the first place. Forget being able to prevent it, which we have failed spectacularly for several years. We are still not being able to come up with a concrete response to this air emergency.
Good evening, everyone. So, four basic issues. I'll address them very quickly, one at a time. One is that we have allowed the situation to reach this catastrophic proportions. It's very poor governance, very poor administration, terrible communications from the administration, from the government to the schools and the parents and the children. It is absolutely Alice in Wonderland. It's a classical circus that you are informing at 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock at night as to what the parents need to do the next morning. This is completely ridiculous and unacceptable. For the last 10 years, we have seen that the air quality during the winter months progressively goes down. Of course, this year has been totally chaotic because it's reached a figure of 999. There were some places in South Delhi where it apparently, through the international readings, had reached 1500, 1600 as AQI. Now, what is important to understand is that the health is an object, point of discussion which is non-negotiable. We can't have something as a piecemeal kind of band-aid solutions. So very quickly going forward, kids, especially under the age of 15, more so under the age of 5 and 8, are exposed in the earliest part of the morning where the humidity and the dew factor precipitates PM 2.5. So the air quality is the worst. It's the coldest also, so it affects the respiratory system the most. Remember, kids breathe twice as fast as adults. So the number of particulate matter which they can inhale is double of that of adults. They are closer to the ground height point of view, so they inhale much more of the carbon emissions. And lastly, most importantly, is kids are affected the most. There are huge amount of international studies to show a drop in IQ of 6 to 10% directly because of air pollution. There is a higher incidence of cancers in children, cardiometabolic disorders, brain disorders, loss of cognitive function, and more importantly, respiratory system gets permanently damaged. What are we doing for the next generation? Didn't we know that all this is happening year after year? Please give me just a couple of minutes. This is extremely important. Why can't we plan the calendar properly? We know that there is a particular curriculum to be done. It is not something which is cast in stone that you have to have 1 month or 1.5 months or 5 weeks or 6 weeks vacation in summer months. Why are we not capitalizing and taking advantage of the good months? Worldwide, we have to beat the weather. So this is not a unique thing. The preparedness as far as online was concerned should have been a lot earlier and a lot better. What we need to do is we need to finish a particular curriculum. I'm totally against this hybrid model. It's a complete waste of exercise, a futility of the most weird type, in which some children are in class and the others are at home. What we need to do is we need to use the months which are of better weather, even using some of the Saturdays as half days to fill in those 20, 25, 30 days in a year. It's easily done. Point number 2 is keep contingency as buffer days. That means you have finished the course, but still you have 4 or 5 days which are left over in the calendar. Lastly, most importantly, is the entire school can never be air purified. There is a particular point of time as a duration of travel, be it in private cars or in buses. There is a particular time in which the kids are in open corridors, sometimes in playgrounds. So it is virtually impossible to sanitize the entire environment. We have created this man-made catastrophe. Yes. And now we are compounding the problem by not thinking this through properly. The months which are good in weather should be used.
But Dr. Bagai, how do we even...
These long, prolonged holidays...
But Dr. Bagai, how do we strike a balance? I mean, that was the solution I was going to come to, that we change the Diwali break. But Dr. Bagai, how do we genuinely balance this point that if our perception is such that once the AQI comes down from 999 to say 300, 350, we think that the worst is over and it's safe to send up children out to school, because every day we don't send children to school, there are consequences we have all noticed. We forget the fact that even for children, our air quality of 300 to 350 is lethal.
Yes, so this is a very important point. That's why I'm saying we need to better utilize the better months so that we have enough buffer months and contingency for this time of the year. When the situation is bursting the roofs and everyone is crying because we can't breathe, that was 999. But most of the time in winter months, the AQIs are above 300, 350, 400. So let me explain to the viewers that every notch of PM 2.5 and SOx and NOx and carbon monoxide and nitrogenous compounds and methane, which is going up, is increasing the cardiometabolic mortality by 2-fold. We will die earlier, we will have a more miserable next generation. We don't want that to happen. We know that each and every body organ is involved with this kind of exposure to pollution. Even 250 is bad. 200 is bad. Worldwide, the norms of WHO is if it is crossing 50 to 60, we are on guard. Here we were sleeping till it's reaching 800, 900. We are allowing this to happen. It is so foolish.
Okay.
Why can't we have a calendar which is modified for the need of the hour? We don't need prolonged breaks all year long.
Is that the solution? Then let me, Dr. Bagai, you have come up with a very radical solution. And I think I just have time for the last word from Vinesh Memon. So let me put that across to Vinesh Memon. If I have time, I'll go to the principal on the panel also. Is that the best case solution we have, Vinesh? Because change how to prevent pollution as a whole battle game, which we've lost for several years. Should we look at perhaps changing the Diwali break or curtailing the winter break to ensure that during November there are more days off? But that still doesn't answer the fact that at the end of the day, parents will still have to work. They don't have an extended Diwali break.
Look, honestly, Dr. Sajeev Philip is better equipped to talk about curriculum rework and whether, how to complete a certain curriculum during a certain period. My only take out here is that here we're talking just to address the Delhi-NCR issue, right? I mean, if you're looking at CBSE as a board and you decide to curtail the summer break for schools inside Delhi-NCR, but they don't get curtailed for schools outside of Delhi-NCR, and the board exams are all going to come at the same time, then it just, the entire thing eventually reaches
that's also a problem
where you can't have a certain, right? So you can't just do that. So that's a pretty, it's a good
I think we're losing your video at this point, Vinesh, also.
But it's very simplistic, and it cannot be so easily, but all I'm saying is that it's too simplistic.
Okay, let me just then...
It cannot be enforced.
Yeah, it's not simplistic. I have 60 seconds, so let me then get in, since you pointed out Sajeev Philip is the best person to answer it. Mr. Philip, is that the best option? I mean, at the end of the day, what is the solution then? Should we change the school curriculum or the calendar? Is it even possible to do that?
with all due respect to doctor, uh, CBSE is a very complex thing because our country is so vast, and we also have schools working abroad. I mean, we have affiliated schools abroad. So we have winter-bound schools and summer-bound. That means in the hills, schools go on a longer vacation in the winter, and in the plains, it is in the summers. So the issue is particularly to NCR and North India, Northern Plains, basically. So we cannot have a blanket solution like that. We have to change the school curriculum or the calendar or the planner. I don't think that is a good thing. And working in the summer months is another problem because whatever happens in this country, whatever happens, whether it is extreme cold, whether it is extreme heat, or extreme rain,
the
schools
solution.
are closed.
So from what I understand, I'm sorry, I have to cut you short, Mr. Philip, because I'm running out of time. From what I understand, there are no quick fixes. I mean, the doctor can come up with a solution which, he, in his judgment, will be the best option. But as we've seen, that might be the most feasible for principals, and we're seeing that that might not be the most suitable option for parents as well. I don't know what the solution honestly is because pollution is not going away anytime soon. The
We need to
impacts of
address
global
pollution.
warming, peak summers, which will require school closures, peak winters, is not going to go out anytime soon as well. It
We need to
requires
address the
better
root
sensitivity,
cause.
understanding everyone else's plight, and that's pollution is the root cause, but also apathy. What we saw yesterday in terms of the circulars being issued at late in the night, I think that is something that can easily be worked on. Nevertheless, thank you so much all, my guests, for joining me on this very important urban debate.